All right. Welcome, everyone, to another riveting episode, I guess you would call it, of NapKim Math, where we break down data into bite sized pieces, aka napkins, so that we can derive some insights. Hi, Napping Ood. Thank you so much for joining. Before I get into the actual data, I'm going to touch on something that I talked about, I believe, on Thursday, and it's some of the probabilities that we've been looking at. And so let's talk about one of the most frustrating moments. You play Wheel of Fortune. It has 25% chance to modify a joker, and you get a nope. Unless your run decides to go bananas and Gross Michael gets a polychrome. But that's a story for a different day. But let's just say you get a nope. Happens again and again and again. And you start thinking to yourself, there's no way that this is actually a 1 in 4 chance. But really, it probably is. So let me explain a little bit of the math behind it. Don't worry, I'm not going to get too technical on you. So the Wheel of Fortune has a 1 in 4 chance of hitting. That's 25%, and that's when it will actually change one of your jokers. Otherwise, it just gives you a big old nope, and you don't get anything. It seems really simple, but our brains sometimes hate that randomness, especially when it doesn't feel fair. And that's where, in math or statistics, the law of large numbers comes in. Over a lot of tries, your Wheel of Fortune actually happening 1 in 4 times will actually get closer to that true 1 in 4. So if you play Wheel of Fortune 4 times, the chances of you actually getting it 1 out of 4 is probably not super likely. But the more times you try it, the more likely it is. So if you try it, let's see, 100 times, the chance that you'll get 25 times happening could be pretty good. It would be around 25, maybe more, maybe less. If you got up to 1,000 tries, you'd see about 250 successful modifications. That's the long game. It happens over time. The more times you try it, the more likely it is to eventually converge to a 1 in 4 chance. But that can be super duper frustrating in the short term. You could get 5, 10, 20 nopes in a row, but you could also get 5, 10, 20 actually modifications in a row. That doesn't mean that the odds are broken. It's just randomness doing what randomness does. And if you're thinking, I've failed 3 times, it has to hit this time. It has to change this time. That's called the gambler's fallacy. It's the belief that the randomness, the chance, actually remembers what happened last time. When you play that Wheel of Fortune, it doesn't remember that you played it 3 times in a row and you didn't get any results from it. It doesn't remember. It's independent from previous events. Every time you use the card, it has a 25% chance, no matter what happened before. So, whenever you play Wheel of Fortune, don't get upset, especially if you get a nope. It's not a lie. It's just probability being rude. The universe doesn't owe you a Joker mod just because it's being stingy, but over time, the more and more you play, the more and more Wheel of Fortunes you play, the more likely it is to get to 1 in 4 chance. There are a lot of people on Reddit actually that have that tracking where they have tried it over 1,000 times and they actually are getting close to 1 in 4. So check it out. I might add some links to some of the ones that I found super useful. But with that, I think we will dive in. Hello, I believe that is Rochelle. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you being here. So, I'm going to switch over to what my data looks like. and walk you all through. I did make a few little changes since last Saturday because the more and more I tracked, the more and more I realized that some of this was just a little bit too much. So I edited myself, and that will have a little bit of an impact of what we are tracking. Awesome. I really appreciate you being here. So in Balatro, every game is considered a run. This sheet didn't change from what we did last time. It has pretty basic information that you get at the end of your run. Whether you win or lose, we know there's one row per run. You win or lose that, you have one deck you're playing, one stake you're playing, and we're able to capture all the pertinent information for that run. For rounds, I actually believe I didn't change much. We identify the blind, what tag shows up, whether you skip the blind to get that tag or not, what the effect of the tag is if we skipped it, and the score for your round, and then how much money you ended up having. The Joker effect for like Mr. Bones or Chico, I haven't used yet because I haven't needed to, but that's a column that's there for future reference. With our hands, I simplified this even more because we are tracking some of the things in other places. It's basically identifying within a round all the different hands you play, what the poker name is, how many discards you used, and the score for that. And in the first couple of games, I was getting the score for the actual hand played, but then in later rounds, I ended up changing it to be just your score, your cumulative score for that round after that hand is played to make it a little bit easier to track. And so I didn't have to keep trying to pause at just the right moment or do some math to get to that. Shop, simplified it a bit too. First, I was tracking every single thing that appeared in the shop, and that became quickly unmanageable. And so in the later runs, I was just tracking the shop ID for to make it easier to identify when we purchase like jokers or consumables, and then any of the vouchers that I bought, I ended up tracking in here. And rerolls, I was initially doing one row per reroll, but again, unmanageable, unnecessary, and so I just ended up tallying up how many rerolls. A lot of data is just trying to simplify to what makes sense and what will actually help you get to what you want, because some of this stuff was me trying to track every single thing, which I love data, but I believe the first game that I played, it ended up taking like somewhere between 6 to 8 hours to track, which is extremely unmanageable for something like this. And with some of these simplifications, I still take about 2 to 3 hours per game to track, but over time that is going to go down a little bit too. I also have the Joker information. So when we buy jokers, what their name is, how we got them, any additional information like if they're negative or have a certain sticker on them, and if we sold them, especially if it's for something like our Verdant Leaf, where it disables the debuffs. We have our consumables, which tracks all of our tarots, our planet cards, our spectral cards, and I believe that's all of them in here, and how they affect cards, other jokers, and everything like that. We have our playing cards, which tracks what cards we start with. So like the Ace of Clubs is the first one on the list, and then any modifications as we're going through. So like if I use, because I love lucky cards, the Magician, that's going to change my Jack of Hearts and Nine of Diamonds in this run, change them into lucky cards, and I track the original card. And if you go up here to the Jack of Hearts, you'll say that it's last available when you changed it to the lucky card. And then finally, I have a list of every time we added to our chips and multi for our poker hands. And the majority of them are going to be planet cards. I think especially, I don't think I have used anything else in these runs yet, but that can help track what level you get your poker runs to. Now, a lot of how I've structured this, the reason I structured it this way is because when you bring things into a database, you want one row in each of your tables per whatever grain you're trying to build. And so your grain is kind of like the level of detail that you want to see. So in this Joker tab, the grain is one row per Joker per run, but there's going to be a new row added in with a separate like Joker ID if you change that Joker. So if I use, let's see, ectoplasm to get a negative Joker on my Fibonacci, my original Fibonacci would be listed up here, and then the change would be a separate row. And it's important, especially as we're building this out, that we do have primary keys in each of our tables so that you can identify how often things happen, and you can also track as you're going through so that you don't accidentally say, oh, I already used, my Uranus card to get my 2-pair leveled up. And so this way there's one row per whatever you want to track. Thank you so much for the raid default streamer. So glad you all are here. I've been enjoying your streams and really, really happy to have you all. I really appreciate it. I've just been going over the data structure for what I've been tracking, and we're going to show one more thing and then hop into BigQuery to do a little bit more of the data that you all saw last time. That's not weird. Everybody has their own personality, special sauce, so it's good to see your personality shine in your streams. One of the things that I actually started doing after last week is I pulled up on Reddit, someone made a sticker tracker, and so Dr. G Money, and I really love it, and it's actually a simple way for anyone to track their own Balatro stats if you want to. I'll also add a link to it in a couple different places as well. But you can, like, for Joker, we ended up winning gold stake with him. If you click that, it would fill in all your different stakes, and so you could track over time how that changes. And so I'm going to filter this to show all the ones that we have won with, and so we can see, greedy and gluttonous, we've won on white stake. Gross, Michael. We ended up winning green stake with them. And so you can kind of see your distribution. You already have completionist plus plus. That's incredible. That is a very difficult feat. That's for those of you who don't play Balatro, that's when you win every deck on gold stake, which is the hardest, and you also have a gold sticker, so you won at least one gold stake with each of your jokers. So it's super hard. 15,000 hours? Holy cow. That's probably actually where my mobile gameplay is up to, and I'm nowhere near completionist plus plus. I'm getting there, but slowly but surely. So this helps track, since we started from Scratch how we're doing over time. There's also tabs where you can see like what percentage of your rarity has a sticker, which of your stickers by your stake. And so you can even see how many total stickers you have and jokers with at least one sticker. And Dr. G Money also did a way to track your stickers over time, which is pretty cool. And because I am such a nerd, I created a couple of other views on this because I'm really interested in knowing. I duplicated this sticker tracker and started tracking how many times I got a specific sticker on each joker. So, like Greedy Joker, we have one. I'm gonna filter all of the jokers we haven't won anything on. And like for Gross Michael, we've only won green stake with him, so he doesn't technically have a white and a red sticker, but in terms of the highest sticker being on the Joker, he technically has a green sticker. So for me, I think it would be kind of cool. It might take a long time. I might never get there. In addition to getting gold sticker on all of my jokers, I've thought it would be really cool to get at least a win in each of the stakes with each joker. That's my like long-term, probably years and years down the road plan with this, but I think that'd be really cool to watch. And photograph, super useful so far. We have 2 wins on white stake with him, and so I'm actually tracking that too. Made some bad Nickelback jokes last time because we ended up duplicating him with now I'm not going to remember which spectral card, but we ended up duplicating a polychrome photograph. Yes, photograph hanging Chad, winning combo. That is a great combo. Let's see. And so I did kind of the same thing that Dr. G Money did, except this time with the number of stickers and looking over time as well. And I actually created this from scratch to help track which deck we've gotten to gold stake on when we get there, and what decks that we need to do a little bit more work to try and get up there. So we've played and won on white, red, and green stake on the red deck so far, and we've won on the white stake on the blue and yellow. And so this will help track, okay, we've won 20% of our decks. We've won the white stake on 20% of our decks, but we haven't won anything on black deck yet. So again, over time, this will be helpful. And one of the things that Dr. G Money made as well is to make it easier to track when you win the gold stake, what deck, and basically putting a screenshot and what date for when you win. So that's cool as well. And I'll put that in some of my links because you don't have to be a business intelligence engineer to be able to track this stuff. There are some things out there that make it really useful to track, even if you've already won Completionist Plus Plus. I do not have a Discord channel yet. I am planning on making one at some point in the future. I am just starting out, so I don't know quite when the right time for Discord channel is yet, but I will figure out a good place to put all this stuff together. Yeah. I don't know if people want to talk to me yet, so I haven't quite done that yet. I have been updating my GitHub page, which I believe is linked in both YouTube and Twitch, wherever you're looking. And the Balatro specific queries that we wrote last week are stored in here, so you can see that. I think I might put some of those links directly in GitHub because that's probably the easiest. But I'll figure out what's going on. And I love commenting. It's one of my quirks with code. Thank you so much. And so, like, our napkins is where our general queries are going as well. And so for like querying data, I have a folder for commented and uncommented. So if you want to copy paste the uncommented version, but look at the commented version to see what's going on, we have like our join syntax, and I put all the links to the BigQuery documentation in there as well. Your select statement, your from, how you join. And so if you actually want to copy and paste this in, there's a version 2 that doesn't have the comments to make it a little bit easier. So let's hop into BigQuery and get started. So last week we created a couple different data sets. So our reference tables has the information about, you know, all the different antes, how many chips you have to get in order to beat it, and all that information to be able to join together. We started making our played data directly from Google Sheets. And if you remember, because we want to link to a Google Sheet so we can get live updates on the data, we can't actually see the data directly in BigQuery because it doesn't store it, which is nice because it's not expensive, but it also makes it sometimes harder to work with. And so I loaded in all of those. And in the, let's see, the played data views, I started based off what we did last week, where for the run query, because when you bring it in from Google Sheets, it does have all those extra rows that we don't need. I created views to make it so the information we are pulling from the run table is only the pertinent information. So instead of 1,000 rows, we only have, I think we played 7 games so far, we only have 7 rows that get pulled in. And so these views are a way that you can basically run the same query and query over and over without having to rewrite it every single time. And they're also nice because you don't store the data in views. It's really cool, so that in BigQuery, you're not running up a lot of costs from storage. So while our reference tables, we brought those in via CSVs, and so it's actually storing that data. All of our played data is from Google Sheets, so it stays up to date. Every time I update it, the next time we query it, it'll be up to date. And the views on top of that make it so that it's, again, up to date, no storage. And so it's really nice to be able to play around with these as well. Now, one of the interesting things is I was testing out all of these and ran into the same problem we ran into last week. So let's say we're gonna just bring back everything in our hand table, limit to the first 10 rows. So select star is everything, from is what table or view we want to pull it from, and 10 is just 10. It's not necessarily going to be the first 10, but it's 10 random rows. And it's saying I have an error. Now, this is in the view, and so I'm going to go and open up the hand raw table. And so if we're looking at this, it's telling me that my round ID is a date. So I brought it into BigQuery directly from the Google Sheet. I trusted BigQuery to say it knows what type of data that's coming in, but it's thinking my round ID is a date because it's 1-1-1 in the very first row. And so to be able to use it, I'm actually going to delete the hand table, and I'm going to create a new table, and I'm going to grab my URL, go back here and say create our table from our drive, put in our URL, go to Google Sheets, and we want to say exactly what the tab is, so hand. The first day of the first month of the first year, the Balatro data was formed. In the void, the Joker crawled into the light. Played the Wheel of Fortune and said, nope, come back tomorrow. And so we'll call our table hand, because that's how we've been setting things up. And because auto detect failed us last time, it happens. It's a computer, it doesn't know everything. We're going to add our fields one by one. And so I'm actually going to, we have run ID, round and run ID, hand ID. Let's see if we can remember. Run ID, round in run ID. What was the next one? Hand ID, run ID, round in run ID. Okay, now we have round ID, hand in round ID. Poker name, discards used, and hand score. Poker name, discard used, and hand score. Now that we've typed all those in, we can change the data types to what we say is the actual real data type. Now for run ID, round ID, round and run ID, and hand and round ID, we can say those are integers because they're a whole number and won't ever be strings. Our hand ID and our round ID are going to be strings, and our round ID is not going to be a date. So those are good. And then our poker name is a string, so it's just text. Our discards used, that's always going to be a whole number, so we can call that an integer. And for those of you who have played Balatro before, what data type should our hand score be? Any ideas? So we you have no clue. That's okay. So because we can get up to scores that have E whatever or naninf, we actually want to keep it as a string, which is a little counterintuitive, especially since we're just starting off. Yeah, it can be fun, but if you bring it in as the wrong data type, it can mess some things up. Yeah, we love a good naninf. And I've never gotten one personally, but I have gotten some e-scores, not in NapKim math yet. And so we want to make sure that our building our own data set, we're building to scale. So that's why we want to use a string instead of an integer, because at a certain point, if we end up building our jokers to scale well, we do not want to have integers in here. I might have to change that in other tables as well, but for now, we'll keep it as is. Now, you can also change whether the field is nullable, required, or repeated. I'm just going to leave that as nullable for now, and that's fine. You can also add in description fields. So that's really nice because when you're looking at your data, that can really help you see the basically the purpose of that field. I did not know that if you go into mods, money can also go to NanInf. I probably won't be ever getting near that amount, but that is really good to know. So let's see. I'm actually going to go into my data dictionary that I've been starting to create. It is not perfect, so please make sure that you're not taking this as like gold. Let me see. I think, and a lot of them are notes to myself to come back to, and I have changed things since I initially built this, but I'm going to grab the poker name, and that's the planet name, the name of the poker hand, example, pair. So I'm just going to throw that in here. Did it copy the whole thing? No, it did not. Let's try that again. Nope, it does not like that. So I'll just type in the name, the poker hand, example, pair. Thank you, default. I appreciate it. I'm just one person trying to bring nerdiness to the world. All right, so we'll see what that looks like when we create our table. I'm not going to create any tags because we do have headers in our table or in our spreadsheet. We're going to skip one row because that's going to be our header. And I'm also going to click quoted new lines because in some of our reference tables and some of our data sets, we do have new lines and also jagged rows just in case there's not information in some of the last couple rows. I'm going to leave my default rounding mode to default. You can also change whether it goes halfway away from 0 or halfway even. So let's create our table. Hey, jokes are good. It's all fun. So now that we created hand, my humor is sometimes dry, sometimes people don't get it, and it's a lot funnier in my head. But everyone has their own different style. So let's see. Because our view still says that our round ID is a date, I'm going to go back to our GitHub, to our Balatro dataset, and let's see, we have our query to create our view that I'm just going to copy paste in here. And that's why, especially for views, I don't mind doing create or replace. You just have to be super careful. It's actually the one you want to replace. And this is very easy to do when you're working in your own personal data, but I can almost guarantee you that if you're trying to do this in your work environment, you're not going to be able to create a view unless it's in like some kind of sandbox environment. So just know that different types of software have different rules about what you can do and where you can do it. I know in BigQuery, like at work, I have to use a sandbox if I'm going to create anything. I can't do anything in production, and that's a feature, not a bug, because then you'd have people accidentally doing a lot of stuff to data. But in our own personal environment, it all works out well. So create or replace our view. So we replaced it since we had already created it. And so I'm going to open that back up again. And now it says that my round ID is a string. And so I can exit those out, and I'm going to highlight my query again. You can't see it because my face is in the way, but it's giving me a green check saying this query will process now. And so when I hit run, it now has the first 10 rows in our hand query. The same thing happened with the shop data too, but I went and fixed that already, so we didn't have to go and do all of that. And let me actually show you before I forget. We had put that description in here, and so we can see that now. The nice thing about working in my own personal environment is I can edit the schema directly. So if I wanted to change that to a flush, I can edit that in here. I think I accidentally put it in there twice or something, or it cut it off. You can also change any of the other descriptions while you're in here. You can set a default value, but you can't change any of the data types in here, which is what I tried to do first. I tried to change my date to a string, didn't like it, and so I changed it, and now it's flush, and now the description is not duplicated. You can also edit the details and say this is a table with 1 row per hand per run, and that way shows up here, and it's a little bit easier for other people to use it or other people to find. I'm always a proponent of making sure you have metadata and information to help you find what you want to look for. So now that we have everything set up, let's actually look at what we ended with last week. Last week we were looking at the most common tags, and so I ended up creating a view to make it a little bit easier, where I just put the query that we used. I'm going to put this in here. So this was the query where we had our round information joined to our tag reference table, and we were joining on the tag name to get the appropriate benefit information, so the text that it shows saying what each of the tags do, and counting how many times our tags showed up. And some of these null statements were to make sure that we were not grabbing information that wouldn't have a tag. So like when you're boss blind, on your boss blind, you don't get a tag option, and so that's why we have the tag name is not null. And I also have where the blind name is not null. That's probably not necessary anymore because I am referencing the view where we cut out anything that wasn't actually needed. So that's probably not necessary anymore, but I'm going to keep it in there. And I believe last week, let's see, we're going to limit it to the first, I can't remember if we had 2 or 3 runs in there. I'm going to look at 2. So to see what it looked like last week. Okay, I believe this is what happened last week because our double tag was our highest, or the tag that was showing up the most. It showed up 5 times, and you can see that we have our information about what that tag does. Now, because I created this view, I'm actually going to close that to make it a little bit easier to move around in. So I created that view for the most common tags. I'm going to query it and select everything because I created it so that there's 1 row per tag. And this will have up-to-date information for all the, let's see, how many runs? We've had 6 so far. Thank you, I appreciate that. My voice is calming. I know I'm soft-spoken, and so sometimes it can be a little boring, but hopefully this is making data accessible for everyone. So I reran our view, and so it pulled from our most up-to-date tag, or our most up-to-date run information. And so now we have a lot more information in here. We have more tags than we had last time. Last time we only had 5 double tags. We actually haven't found another one since then, which is pretty interesting. And D6 is what showed up the most. The interesting thing is, I would probably say that because I haven't used D6, it might be trying to have it show up more often so that I have the option to find all my tags. So we have, that's our most common. Rerolling our boss blind is there as well, and then a mega, can't, for some reason I can't expand this. Our, let's see, a tarot pack. I haven't used the soul yet. I haven't found it yet in this, but I know what the soul does. I'm actually a big Chico stan because I feel like he makes it a little bit easier for me to get a win in Ante 8. But the website. I have not used the website. And I'm not sure what that is. So now we can also add in a little bit more information to what we did before. So I'm going to take out this, so it's the same exact code as in our view. And I want to know how often we are skipping to actually get these tags. And so what is our most frequently skipped tag to get to that information? Ooh, a seed analyzing tool. That's really cool. For those of you who don't know Balatro, the seed is what we track at the end of our run. It basically tells us all the same things will show up if you play the seed again. So you can see some cool information about how hard it is, what things pop up, and that is really cool. Yeah, that would be great. I don't know if I have links blocked in here or not, but you can give it a try. So let's see our round information. We do have whether we played it or not, and so the no skipped is what I want to track. I see stars, so that means that I have links blocked to keep scammers out. But I'll figure out where to find it. So the count star gives us how many times that tag name shows up in a row in our data set. So that's basically saying anytime there's a row that has our tag name, count it. We could also do, I believe, count 1, and it's going to be the same thing. And so now I want to figure out how many times we actually skipped. Okay, thank you. Spectral Pack, GitHub IO, the soul. I will definitely check that out. So I want it to track how many times we have no skipped for the corresponding tag. And so there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can create an if statement, just like you would in a lot of other programming language. You can also use case statements. Because this is either or, it's okay, distractions are always fun. And the if you can use with basically an either or, and then the case statement is you can have more than 2 conditions. So if, and we had our played, is that just what it's called? Played, okay. Played equals no skipped. So that's saying if in that column we have no skipped, we'll have a comma, and then what happens if it's true? We're going to do 1. And what happens if it's false? We're going to put 0. And then we can sum this up. we can wrap our sum around it. And so if it's played, it'll give us a 1 every time we have one that says that it's played or it's skipped. And if it doesn't meet that condition, it'll get a 0. We'll take the sum of that. So we can say as count of tags skipped. And I'm going to go to more to format my query a little bit, and let's see what this pops out. So rightfully so, we have not skipped to get a D6 tag, so that's going to be 0. We've skipped to get charm 3 times, so that shows up there. And we can see how often our tags are being skipped. We can also, this is where live coding is fun. I'm going to take the same exact thing, so our sum, and we can do division. So I am going to show you the way that you should do it instead of, you can just do divided by and then your count star or whatever. However, that gets tricky because if you don't have anything in your denominator, you'll divide by 0, which isn't allowed. Bad math. And so in SQL, you can do safe divide, wrap it around, your numerator will be first, and then you'll have a comma, and then your denominator. Always close your parentheses, and we can say as frequency, well, let's see, percent skipped, where I'm just gonna abbreviate percent. I'm going to format my query again because I don't like to type in all caps because I feel like I'm yelling, but standard practice is to have all of these in all caps. And that's going to give us a decimal saying what percent happened. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to round this first to 4 decimal places. So that's going to be your whole number percent plus 2 extra decimal points. And then I'm going to multiply that by 100 so that it shows up to us as a whole number dot decimal point. Yes, you do speak code. I'm going to format that again. Might not be the prettiest, but this is basically saying, okay, we have our percent. We're rounding that to 4 decimal places because our percents will always show up as a 0 point whatever unless it's over 100%. And then multiplying that 100 to get our whole number. And instead of ordering by how many times a tag showed up, I'm going to order by our percent skipped from highest to lowest. So let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So we're going to order by 5 descending. So the highest percent skipped first. And then if there's a tie, 1 ascending means our tag name in alphabetical order. So we'll go ahead and run that. And garbage has only showed up once. You get $1 for every unused discard. And because we used it that one time, get 100% skipped. Investment, we've skipped 4 out of 4 times, 100%. And let's see, negative, which is my favorite. I knew that I did not skip one time, even though in 99% of the time I do skip it to get a free negative joker because it was an ante 8 right before the boss blind, and I knew I wasn't going to play into endless. And so for me, it was not necessary to skip. Let me take a drink of water just a second. So we can find interesting things like what we actually skip the most frequently. I actually didn't realize that I would be skipping, well, garbage only showed up once, so that's not a big denominator. And so you either skip it or you don't. It's 100 or 0. But some of these, I'm actually surprised that I do skip as often as I do. And some of these, like we get down here, some of the zeros, rerolling the next boss blind. I always feel like I'm twisting fate and I'm going to get a worse one when I do that. But if the plant shows up and I have photograph and it's relying on that, I will definitely use that. D6, getting a free reroll. You're right. It is super helpful in the first ante to see if something more economical shows up, because sometimes finding just the right joker in that first ante can really help bring your run to get you a win. I'm surprised I actually haven't taken the double tag, but I think a lot of it was inopportune times. The foil, I probably will skip that a little bit more in Plasma deck, my favorite deck, because it is more important to get chips than multi. And yeah, Orbital, there hasn't been any poker hands that I wanted to upgrade. I think Top Up has always come when my Joker slots are full, and Voucher I haven't really found the need for yet. I think that would show up when I just didn't have enough money for it to make sense. Negative's actually your least favorite. That's interesting. Yeah, harmful or useless. A lot of times, especially when trying to get gold stickers, negative is really helpful because, especially with the useless ones, it can help you get a gold sticker on one and won't hog up your joker slots. But yeah, some of the harmful ones, especially if it's like eternal and perishable when you get into higher stakes, it can make it a little bit more difficult to actually want to get it. At some of these lower stakes, it's actually not that bad. But yeah, a lot of times it can just be useless ones. But they all got to get a sticker, so you have to weight the cost of the shop versus the cost of what it is. That's very true, um, especially when you want to be building up your economy so you can buy the things that you want. So yeah, it is interesting because I tend to try and get as much money as I can as fast as I can so that I can earn interest and buy more things. But that also means that a lot of times I will end up losing in the first ante. So yeah, you can't help but take a double tag negative if I see it. Yeah, that is totally fair. Gambler brain go burr. Very true. It's like that's a like good draw getting a double tag and then a negative right off the bat. It's fun when you get into I can't remember the deck name right now, but the deck where you get a free double tag after um, winning a blind. I always save those up for negative jokers or like economy. Usually skip the shop tag, the investment tag, or the reroll and ante one. Yeah, that makes sense. I will skip the shop tag for sure, more in ante one than in later antes. And always investment to get those $25, and then get the voucher tag after you've gotten to endless. That makes sense. Yeah, because usually you have a lot more economy in endless, or at least you try to. All right, let's see. I have my, because I'm a nerd, I have my graph paper notes about what I wanted to show today. Everything is graph paper. And let's look at some new insights. So I'm going to keep this up here to put it in our GitHub for later. However, if like you feel like you accidentally close something that you want to get back to, at least in BigQuery, you can hit the bottom panel down in the right, and the queries that you've run will show up here. So they're not going to be lost, thankfully. You can hover over to see what all the queries are. And so let's see, this one, I'm going to click on the 3 dots. If you view job in editor, it'll bring the query back up if you lost it, and if too much time hasn't gone by, it'll show your results as well. So that's always a lifesaver for me when I accidentally close a tab or my BigQuery gets refreshed with that information. But to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to keep that up for now. Yeah, ask away, and we can go through some of that. We're going to hop into our run data next. And I'm going to go ahead, open up the view because that's the one that has our filtered to what we want. Go ahead, hit the query button. And I'm going to take off the limit, and I'm going to put select 1 for now while we figure out what we want to do. So let's start with, we have our run ID, which tells you what run we're playing. And so a run is a game in SQL, or sorry, not in SQL, in Balatro. And let's see how long each of our games have taken. So you can do that a couple different ways. I prefer using, I'm going to use time diff, and it tells you what should be in there when you type it out. And I'm going to put in, you start with what you start, your start time. And so we have our start timestamp, our ending timestamp, end timestamp, and then how you want to look at it. So I'm actually going to do both hour, so as hours, and I'm going to do the same thing with minute and change this as minutes. And what's it telling me? So our start timestamp and our end timestamp aren't actually, they're strings. So we can use, I'm going to go into, that means we have to convert it to a time first. So you can basically wrap time around your timestamp, and it'll convert it from a string to a time. So we'll just put time, wrap that around all of those. In our view, we can make it so that those are actual timestamps as well. And I'm going to format this to make it a little bit easier, and it's still yelling at me. So it's looking for a date time. Unless, let's see, how is this coming through? Select star from here. It's only going to have 6 records. So we'll see how it's showing up. Probably just doesn't like how it brought in our timestamp. Yeah, that's probably not a standard timestamp. And so I might have to play around with it to actually format time. I might have to play around with that to get that exactly how we want it. So I think for today we'll skip that, but that's basically the format that you're going to use. As long as your start timestamp is in the right format for SQL to run, you do your time diff, you take your start timestamp and your end timestamp and tell it how basically the how you want it to look. All right, trying to create a table with a check condition where you can set what values are acceptable as input. So that is a little bit of a different beast that I don't know that I can properly speak to, at least right now. But definitely try out some like case statements or if statements, and that might help you get to it. You also might need to cast things to different data types. Gotcha. Unfortunately, I don't know what all the conditions are, and so I want to keep going with the Balatro data so we can see some of the insights from there. But I can think about it, and if I can think of something that might help, I can let you know. So that was a bust. You're very welcome. Let's see. We can also go in here and check out. I'm gonna open up my stats on a different browser so I can see it a little bit better and I don't have to keep switching back and forth. And let's see. We can put our deck name, our stake name. Oh, excellent. Casting to different data types actually fixed it. I'm so glad that helped. Casting is usually the solution to a lot of my problems. So I'm really glad that helped. So let's see. Let's just see what it looks like when we say select our deck name, our stake name, and count how many times each of those showed up. We'll start with that. We'll group by all. We can also group by 1 and 2 or group by deck name and stake name because that's basically your grain that you want to get to that level of detail. And this is saying count star or count 1. I actually do count 1 because it's a little less intensive, is how many times each of those show up. So we've played our red deck, white stake twice. Everything else we've played once. And so I'm going to do the same thing that we did with our tags. We're going to do, I'm going to do a case statement this time instead of an if to show you the basically different ways of looking at this. So we're going to do case when our when column, we can say is true, or because it's Boolean and we're looking for a true value, you can also just say when. But I'm going to put is true just to make it a little bit easier to read. And then we'll have our then. So what happens when our when is true? Then we're going to say 1. Else, what happens if it's not true? We're going to say 0. So this is just another way of writing an if statement. So instead of saying if when is true, comma 1, comma 0, we're saying case when is true, then 1, else 0. We could also put in other conditions like you have to put it after your then. So something like when our deck name equals blue deck, then whatever, then 7. And you can do multiple statements like that. And then you have to end your case statement always. And we can name it as we're going to call it how many wins. Wins per, I'll just say wins. And now because our 7 is actually not going to do what we want, I'm going to take that out. I was just showing how case statements work. So I'll put our else 0 back in there. And what happened was, because I didn't wrap anything around it, it actually created 2 different rows for red deck, white stake. One when we actually won, and one when we did not. And so you always want to check that you're actually aggregating as you expect. So we're going to have a sum wrapped around that, and that will get us our, and I'm going to rename our count column as times played. And so we've played our red deck, white stake 2 times, but only won once. And then all of our others we've played once and won once. So we can see how many times it takes to actually win certain decks, certain stakes as well. Because we don't have a ton of data yet, this is not going to be super useful, but it's something that we can build up over time. Now we can also, let's see, I'm going to put a semicolon here, which means it's going to be a separate query. And I'm going to take our same run table and add a select statement to the top. And let's see, what could we look at? We can see, we can use an average function and see on average how many cards do we play in a run. As average cards, we can see the average cards discarded. As average discards, average cards purchased, average purchases, or average purchased. Take our average times rerolled. Average rerolls. And because we started a new profile, we can figure out how many new discoveries we're getting on average. Now, just like in other places, you do want to be really careful with your averages, especially when you have things that can be null. BigQuery will automatically not consider things that are null, but it will consider things that are 0. And so it is better than doing the sum of the different rounds and dividing it by how many different rounds, because then you actually make sure that you're not counting nulls. Otherwise you might have to do some type of if or a case to get the nulls taken out. But just be cognizant whenever you're using something like average that you're doing what you want it to do. And so because I have 2 queries in here, there's a couple things I can do. If I hit run, it'll run both queries, and I'll show you what that looks like. It'll have them separate out. So if you hit view results, your first query will show up here, and your second query results will show up down here. You can also highlight which one you want to run and hit run, and it'll just do that one. And because our results didn't think about how we would have lots of decimals, I'm going to round all of these to make it a little bit easier to look at. And so round will tell you how many places after the decimal point you want to go. So I'm going to put all those in there. Right now it's yelling at me in the top corner comma 2, that means we're going to have 2 decimal points for each of them. And I'm going to highlight and run that one. And so on average, we played almost 200 cards. There are definitely some runs that brought that up, including the 2 runs where we went into endless. Those are the only 2 that we actually played over 200 cards. And so those are definitely bringing the average up. Our average number of discards is about 80, which actually our very first run, we had over 90. And our second run, where we got our first win and we went into endless, we had about 130. And so those 2 brought the average up. We, on average, purchased like 75 different cards in each run, which is pretty impressive. There are definitely ones that brought us up, including the run where we had both hologram and constellation. And I believe the voucher that takes 25% discount, we purchased 128 cards, where on average, like our others without that one, are in the 60s or 70s. Surprisingly, 25 rerolls on average per game, which makes sense. We actually rerolled the most in our last game, which we only went to ante 8, but I do believe we had the reroll voucher to make it a lot cheaper, and on average about 36 new discoveries. So this can help tell you a lot of things, and it's pretty cool to get some interesting insights just from this. Let's see. I think we'll do one more thing before we end for today. And I'm going to go into the rounds. So our round data, as you know, will tell us within each round, our scores, our tags, whether we played it or not, and our ending money. And let's get the by ante, the average, and I called it round score, because obviously when you go up to higher antes, you'll have the opportunity for a higher score. In ante 1, especially if you don't have any jokers, your score is going to be very small. So that's why I definitely want to separate it by ante. So average score. And let's also get the average ending money as average money. And because we are looking at it by ante, we have to use a group by. And in interest of showing you different ways of doing things, I'm going to say group by ante ID, because that's going to be 1 row per ante. And we're going to order by ante ID ascending as well, so you can see all the different antes in order. And again, I'm going to round to make it look a little bit easier on the eyes. And you can see those scores start to go up very quickly. For the most part, they are consecutive. And for average money ending, it goes up, and then at the end of ante 8 is actually when I end up before the boss blind in ante 8. I end up re-rolling to get the most value of my money, and so that makes sense why, because it will have the boss blind in there, and I pretty much go down to 0 to optimize my money, especially if I'm not going into endless. It makes sense that the ending on hand money is lower, because you also still have the other blinds within that ante that are making it not close to 0. So it is interesting to see how those go up. Um, I will need to do a little bit of work to make it workable for one of the other things that I wanted to look at. Um, but I think we can get into that next time once I have the data structured in a way that works a little bit better. I think that is going to be it for today. I really, really appreciate you all being here. On Tuesday and Thursday next week at 6 p.m. Eastern, I'll be playing some more Balatro. I'll maybe try out some different decks or different antes, or sorry, not antes, different stakes. And then next Saturday, we'll be diving a little bit deeper into the data. I have some complex things that I want to show you all. I'm trying to take it as baby steps, one napkin at a time, so that you all can learn and understand. I know you all can. I really appreciate the commentary and speaking to me while I'm doing this, because I don't like talking to myself on a computer. The interaction is what I think really makes this great. And please like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, and let me know what you think. And I will see you all next time. Yeah, go ahead, default streamer. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.